Chapter 20. If you remember, the children had all gone up with their friends in an aeroplane to try to escape the world they were in, because Moonface had gone away and left the hole so they couldn't find their way back down. Joe was flying the aeroplane. I won't tell you the name of the chapter because it will give it away. Joe flew the aeroplane very well indeed. As soon as he was high enough, he pressed the straight-on handle, and the shining aeroplane flew forward. The children leaned over the side to see what they were flying over. They had soon passed the land of Take What You Want and came to a strange, desolate country where no trees or grass grew, and not a house was to be seen. "That's the country of loneliness," said Moonface, peering over. "Don't land there, Joe. Fly on." Joe flew on. Once he came to an enormous hill, and he had to quickly press the handle marked up, or the aeroplane would have flown straight into it. But otherwise, it really was great fun. Joe had no idea that it was so easy to fly. The little white goat on Beth's knee was as good as gold. It licked Beth's cheek every now and then, just as if it were a dog. The hens were good and quiet, and the clock lay perfectly still. The aeroplane flew over a land of great towers and castles. "Giant land," said Silky, looking in wonder at the enormous buildings. "I hope we don't land there." "Rather not," said Joe, and he pressed the straight-on handle down still further, so that the aeroplane flew forward like a bird, faster and faster. The children's hair streamed backwards, and as for Silky's mop of golden hair, it looked like a field of buttercups blown in the wind. Over the land of Lollipop they went, and over the country of Flop, and then the aeroplane began to make a funny noise. "Hello," said Joe. "What's wrong?" "I believe the aeroplane's tired," said Moonface. "It sounds out of breath." "Don't be silly, Moonface," said Joe. "Aeroplanes don't get out of breath." "This kind does," said Moonface. "Can't you hear it panting?" It certainly seemed as if the aeroplane was panting. "Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh," it went. "Hadn't we better go down and give it a rest?" said Joe. "Yes," said Moonface, peering over the side. "It seems safe enough. I don't know what land this is, but it looks quite ordinary. There's a big green house down below with an enormous garden. Perhaps we could land on that long, smooth lawn, Joe. It shouldn't be too bumpy then." "Right," said Joe, and he pressed the handle marked down, and down they went, gliding smoothly. Bump! They reached the grass and ran along on the airplane's big wheels. It stopped, and everyone got out, glad to stretch their legs. 10 minutes rest and the aeroplane will be ready to go off again," said Moonface, patting it. "I wonder where we are," said Silky, looking round. Moonface gazed at the big green house in the distance. Then he frowned. "Oh my," he groaned. "I know whose house that is. It's a school, and it belongs to old Dame Snap. All the naughty pixies and gnomes and fairies are sent there to learn how to behave better. Let's hope Dame Snap doesn't catch sight of us." Everyone looked about nervously. Suddenly down the path came a tall old woman with large spectacles on her long nose and a big white bonnet on her head. Moonface ran to the aeroplane. "Quick," he said, "it's Dame Snap." But the old lady was up to them before they could escape. "Aha!" she said. "So here is another lot of naughty folk sent to me to be cured. Come this way, please." "We haven't been sent to you," said Joe. "We landed here to give our aeroplane a rest. We're on our way home." "Naughty boy to tell stories like that," said Dame Snap suddenly in such a loud and frightening voice that it made him jump. Come here with me, all of you. There didn't seem to be anything else they could do. Joe, Beth, Franny, Moonface, Silky, the white goat, the 7 hens followed Dame Snap, looking very miserable. The clock wouldn't walk, so Silky had to carry it. Everyone felt very hungry. Joe pulled Dame Snap's sleeve timidly. Could we please have something to eat?" he asked. "A meal will be ready in a few minutes," said Dame Snap. "Heads up, everyone! Don't stoop, little girl," snapped the old woman. And the little girl she meant was poor Franny, who got such a fright that she stood up straight. Really, Dame Snap was not at all a nice person. It was very bad luck to have landed in her garden. But everyone cheered up a little at the thought of a meal. They were taken into a large hall full of pixies and other fairy folk. They were all sitting down in rows at wooden tables, but they stood up when Dame Snap came into the room. "Sit over there," said Dame Snap, pointing to an empty table. The children, Moonface, Silky, the goat, the hens, all took their places. The clock was stood at the end, looking very sulky. The children looked down the tables. "Oh, what lovely cakes! What big jugs of lemonade!" Dame Snap ran her eyes over the little folk standing at the tables. She frowned. "Twinkle, come here," she snapped. A small pixie walked up to her. "Haven't I told you to brush your hair properly for meal times?" shouted Dame Snap so loudly into Twinkle's ear that he burst into tears. "And there's Doodle over there with a torn shirt," said Dame Snap. "Come here, Doodle." Doodle came and was shouted at very loudly indeed. Beth and Franny felt nervous and hoped that their hair and their hands and dresses were clean and tidy. "Sit," said Dame Snap, and everyone sat. "Have a cake," said Joe, and passed Beth and Franny a plate of delicious-looking cakes with cherries in the middle. But what a shock for them! As soon as the cakes touched their plates, they turned into round, hard pieces of stale bread. The children didn't dare say a word. Oh, that's terribly disappointing, isn't it? They saw that the same thing happened to everyone in the room except Dame Snap, who had a marvellous meal of cakes, lemonade and sandwiches. The lemonade turned into water as soon as it was poured into the children's glasses. It was all dreadfully disappointing. In the middle of the meal, a gnome servant came in to say that someone wanted to speak to Dame Snap, and she went out of the room. Then, dear me, the children found that the pixies and the fairies in the room were really very naughty indeed. They crowded round them and jabbed at them and pinched them and made such rude remarks that Franny began to cry. They made such a noise that nobody heard Dame Snap coming back again. My goodness, wasn't she angry? She clapped her hands together and made everybody jump nearly out of their skin. "What's all this?" she said, snapping loudly in a very fierce voice. "Form up a line. March past me at once." To the children's dismay, the cross old lady shouted right in everyone's ear as they passed. But when they passed her, she didn't shout at them, for she knew that they had been teased by the others. So they were very glad indeed and felt a little more cheerful. "Go to the schoolroom," said Dame Snap when the last of the line had gone by. So to the schoolroom they all went and took their places, even the little green-winged hens. "Now, please, answer the questions written on the blackboard," said Dame Snap. "You've each got paper and pencil. Anyone putting down the wrong answers will be very sorry indeed." Joe looked at the questions on the board. He read them out to the others in great astonishment. "If you take away 3 caterpillars from one bush, how many berries will there be left? Add a pint of milk to a pound of peas and say what will be left over? If a train runs at 6 miles an hour and has to pass under 4 tunnels, say what the driver's mother is likely to have for dinner on Sundays." Everybody gazed at the board in despair. Whatever did the questions mean? They seemed to be nonsense. "I can't do any," said Moonface in a loud voice, and he threw down his pencil. "It's all silly nonsense," said Joe, and he threw down his pencil too. The girls did the same, and Silky tore her paper in half. All the pixie and fairy folk stared at them in the greatest astonishment and horror. "Indeed," said Dame Snap, suddenly looking twice as big as usual. "If that's how you feel, come with me." Nobody wanted to go with her, but they found that they had to, for their legs walked them after Dame Snap without them even trying to. It was most extraordinary. Dame Snap led them to a small room and pushed them all in. Then she shut the door with a slam and turned the key in the lock. "You will stay there for 3 hours, and I will come and see if you're sorry," she snapped. "This is awful," said Joe gloomily. "She's no right to keep us here. We don't belong in her silly school. We haven't been naughty. It was just an accident that we came here." "Well, what are we to do now?" said Silky, pushing back her golden hair. "It seems as if we'll have to stay here for 3 hours and then say we're sorry and be shouted at again. I don't like it at all." Nobody liked it. They all sat on the floor and looked angry and miserable. If only they could escape from Dame Snap's silly old school. Oh, I certainly hope none of you ever end up in Dame Snap's school. It's not quite so bad here, is it? See you tomorrow for the next chapter. Let's hope they get away.